Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with your guy, Mawu the Patient. So, with all the new content coming in a few days, I guess now would be the perfect time to ask you all the question. Should you play Druid in 11.0.7? I guess you're here to find out. So get seated, grab a drink, and let's go find out. And, as always, a big disclaimer. This video and the information within the video is mostly built on personal opinions from my experience with the class and with the spec. So no big promises from Mawu. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Okay, let's start by having a look on where Restoration Druid is in the current meta. So right now on your screen you can see the Archon tier list for healer tier list from +7 to +19 in Mythic Plus, okay? I think it's no big surprise to see the Discipline Priest is actually way up there by 3,177 points. Way above Restoration, Shaman, Mistweaver, Monk, and here we have it, Restoration Druid. So there's different sites telling different things, and they are looking at different parameters like healing done, damage done, CC, all that. But on Archon right now, we're placed in a low B tier, okay? Just below Mistweaver Monk, but above the Holy Paladin, above the Press Evoker, and above the Holy Priest. So yeah, that's the current state. We all know that Restoration Druid has not been and is not going to be full meta for the high keys, but in my opinion, Restoration Druids can actually be very, very good for lower keys, as we saw in the MDI, where they actually, most of the keys, like 80% of the keys actually ran Restoration Druid. So they're good for some things and not good for other things, but we'll get back to that later. So let's take a look at what Wowhead says about Restoration Druid. This is the current healer meta according to Wowhead. And as you can see, Press Evoker is all the way up there in S tier. My personal opinion is that when you're running an Aug Evoker, you don't need the Press. So the Press Evoker will be very bad. If you already have an Aug Evoker, you rather want a Disc Priest for the Fortified, the 10% stamina, or you want a Shaman for all the things Shaman brings, Wind Fury as well, the Mastery buff. Or in our example, the Restoration Druid for the Verse buff, okay? The Mark of the Wild. But this is the Wowhead tier list saying that we're actually second worst. Only worst build or worst talent is the Holy Priest. I'm not totally agreeing with this. I actually think we're outperforming Holy Paladin and Press Evoker, but that might just be me. So I've saved this for the last. So the other healer tier lists were like kind of old, and they start off 11.0.5 and some only from 11.0.0. This one on Icy Veins actually got updated. So this is the prediction for the 11.0.7 that we're going into. And as you can see, Restoration Druid and Mistweaver Monk are both getting up there, while they predict that Preservation Evoker, as I told you before, is going down. So we're actually getting up there, trying to compete with the big boys. Also, as all the other tier lists, there's no doubt about it. Disc Priest is dominating this season. I've made a Disc Priest alt and playing it as well, trying to gear it up. But I'll be completely honest with you, I'm still enjoying my Resto Druid more, so that's why we're making this video, right? So that was the current meta for Resto Druid. We're not top notch, but there is a hope that we're actually gonna get A tier and it might be able to compete with the Discipline Priest, the Restoration Shaman, and the Mistweaver Monk, depending on the compositions and what we need in the next season. So I hope the Restoration Druids is gonna get a spot in the rest of the War Within, because I really love the spec. Next off, let's talk a bit about pros and cons of bringing a Restoration Druid into your Mythic Plus. So the first pro would be, for me, the fun. And I know this is strictly like my own opinion, but I just feel like Restoration Druid is so much fun to play. So the playstyle where you go into cat form, you go into catvoke, just going offensively, going out there, keeping everyone hotted up and healthy, getting your vortex down, getting your wild charge. You can actually use a mount in most dungeons by going into travel form, going into cat form, going into stealth, going into bear form. All these forms and the entire kit of Restoration Druid just feels so fun to me. So I had to say that as the first one. My second pro would be that it's very flexible. So right now in most of my videos I talk about that both hero talents are actually good and they're working as different playstyles. So you can go Wildstalker and you can go into melee and do a lot of DPS, or you can stay further back and play Keeper of the Growth and spam Starfires and keeping your trees up for more healing. So the fact that we actually have two hero talents that is working in the Mythic Plus environment just feels very flexible and very nice to play. Next up, very important to mention, is the combat res. So I think that being a healer with combat res just feels very nice. The fact that I can just stay back and combat res the tank if he dies, or combat res the DPS in certain situations, give me the power to like choose when we're going to use the combat res, and that just feels very nice. This is something that I feel like I'm missing when I'm playing on my discipline, priest, alt, or shaman, and etc. So the combat res is very, very nice for Restoration Druid, and it's a very good pro. Next up, I would be talking about the versatility buff, the Mark of the Wild. So when you're running higher keys, most of the time you actually just want and need that versatility buff. So some people are now bringing the Boomkin, but if you're not running a Boomkin in your composition, or you don't have room for a Boomkin DPS, then I would say Restoration Druid is a very good choice for you, because the Mark of the Wild versatility buff is just very, very good. Next off, I would say the massive burst, okay? So this is mostly just due to Convoke, which, as you all know if you've seen my videos, is just a huge dopamine boost for me. Every time I press Convoke or Heart of the Wild, it just feels good. It feels good to play it. It feels good to like jump in there and do massive damage on command every 1 minute when you can use your Convoke. And that big burst damage from all the bites is just a very good pro, I think, because you can stay back, you can heal, and when everyone is stable, you can go in there and burst out damage. That feels very good. Next off, I want to talk about the mobility. So the mobility of the Resto Druid is a huge part for me by playing the class, because I have the travel form and I can use the wild charge to jump. The wild charge in itself is crazy because you can use it in every form and it does something different in the forms, right? Then you have your dash into cat form. You have your prowl. You can actually go stealth like the rogues can do. And yeah, just high mobility. You can jump around all the time. You have your instant cast hots, and it feels very nice to move around, going into cat form, doing DPS, go a bit back to heal everyone and stay safe. All around, it just feels very nice to have high mobility and don't need to hard cast all the time. I do realize that in some key situations you have to hard cast some spells, but yeah, it just feels nice to have the high mobility, in my opinion. And the last one is a very important for my pleasure and my gameplay. So I tried Mistweaver Monk and I had a lot of mana issues. And yes, maybe it's just me playing bad, but on Restoration Druids I never run below 80% mana. And playing a healer in a Mythic Plus environment where time matters, that is very important for me, that I never need to think about my mana usage. I never need to think about mana because I just go into my forms, I do DPS, and I get mana back from that DPS. And that's just a huge pro for me playing a Resto Druid. So for cons, I think the most important con is to mention that we don't have Bloodlust, okay? So there's many groups at the moment running some different kind of comps where you need the Bloodlust. You need the Restoration Shaman because you used to run a healer with Bloodlust, and Restoration Druid don't have that. So just sucks to suck, I guess, okay? We don't have Bloodlust. Second, I would say that something that feels very bad is when you get behind on healing and people are taking like high AoE damage. It's very hard to be reactive healing on your Restoration Druid. You need to be like, you need to know when the damage has come so you can hot everyone up. You cannot just stay back or do DPS in cat form and then after the damage is there, go in and heal everyone. You have very low burst healing and you have very low single target burst healing. You need to have, you are using like 5 or 6 globals to get your tank up, okay? Because the way Restoration Druid works is your mastery, so you need to have as many hots as possible on the target, so you cannot just stand there and spam regrowth. You need some time to build up your healing, and that just feels very bad, and it's a big con for Restoration Druid at the moment. If you fall behind on healing, you will feel behind at the rest of the dungeon, okay? So yeah, So for the third one, I would say is the personals. Okay, so I do realize we have Barkskin and we have Iron Bark, but compared to the other healers, we don't really have that like huge spell. The priest has the bubble thingy where he puts the holy protection down on the ground, and everyone just takes less damage. And the disciplined priest have the pain sub as well as the shaman has the spirit link, where we have Iron Bark, yes, but it's just not as significant as the other two healers, like the pain sub and the spirit link from the shaman. It's just way more impactful in those high keys where we only have Iron Bark. So a bit of a con there for Restoration Druids, sadly. And yeah, the last one is a big one for me, and I want you all to listen up. So if you choose to run Restoration Druids, you need to get into your mindset that a lot of people playing World of Warcraft these days are like only looking for the meta classes, okay? They're only looking for the Discipline Priest or the Restoration Shaman. And people will take a very bad geared Discipline Priest over me. I've seen this countless times. They will take in a Discipline Priest at like 2,700 rating. I'm 3k rating and they don't want me. So there's a thing about the meta, and you need to know if you're playing a Resto Druid that Resto Druid is at the moment, as we saw earlier, a off meta class. So this means it will be hard getting into keys, and there will be long queue timers. I'm sometimes sitting in high keys looking for 14s and 15s, and I'm waiting like 45 minutes and getting no invites. I try to run my own key and people are signing up, but the people I'm actually looking to play for actually only wants Discipline Priest and Shaman. As well as my guild community, the community around me also just want me to play Discipline Priest or Resto Shaman because it's meta. But let's be honest, I don't want to play the meta class. There's so many things. I know there's pros and cons, and of course there will be cons for a spec in the Mythic Plus environment. But in my opinion, the pros just outweighs the cons, okay? Restoration Druid for me personally is a very, very fun spec at the moment. I'm having a lot of fun when I get into keys by playing the playstyle, playing the class, going in and using catwalks, getting that dopamine from Heart of the Wild. So yeah, at the end of the day, I would recommend you running Restoration Druid. When that is said, I would actually recommend you running Restoration Druid up until like key level 12, okay? So my journey from in the start of the war we're in, up until like key level 12 was so fun. I met so many people along the way. We had a blast. And there's a reason they run Restoration Druids in MDI. Because Restoration Druid is actually so good in the lower keys, where they can actually do damage, they can out-heal the big mechanics, they can do all the stuff. When that is said, if you're looking to push 13s or higher, I would actually not recommend you running it. And I would not recommend you that for two reasons. So reason number one is the off meta, right? You will sit in long queues, you will wait a long time to get into groups. And if you don't have a pre-made group of 5 people, people don't want the Restoration Druid, and that's just a hard fact, okay? People want the other classes, so you don't want to sit there with your gear and all your hype and all that and just not get into groups for an hour or two. And every time you try to run your own key, you're just going to deplete it. So that's just my personal opinion. And second of all, I just feel like when I'm running those high keys that Resto Druid is actually lacking healing, okay? So when I was talking to Vickman, the best Resto Druid in the world, about this, he was also talking about there is a like threshold. I think he was calling it 16s. He can run 16s on his Druid, but he cannot go higher than that because the burst and all the damage going out in the group, there's just no way the Restoration Druid can heal that. And that's just the facts, okay? We were talking about the Spirit Glade Totem from the Shaman, the extra health from the Shaman by using the Downpour and all that. And we have the Discipline Priest having all those cooldowns for the groups, the pain subs and the dome thingy there. There's just a point where Restoration Druids cannot follow up with the damage anymore. So yeah, that's just the second opinion. So run the 12 or below with your friends and have a lot of fun on Restoration Druid, or I would actually not recommend you running the Restoration Druid. Not for those high keys, puck environment. If you have a lot of friends to play with, go for it. You can easily play those high keys. When I get into them, I can easily play those high keys. But the problem is if I misstep once or do a mistake, I'm gonna get sent back to base and get sent back to, yeah, looking for another key for 2 hours. And for my personal opinion, that's just, yeah, it's not a fun way to play the game. So, yeah, I guess that was the video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope I answered your question, if rather you should play it or not. I would 100% play it if you're looking for fun and some lower keys, but if you're looking for those high keys, trying to push the meta, think an extra time about it. Think about, do you have friends to play with? Do you have a group of guys to play with? Or are you like, I'm just trying to save you from hours and hours in queue, okay? But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope to pump out way more Restoration Druid content when I get into keys. So yeah, I guess I'll just see you in the next one. Bye guys!